Hi, I'm Ronnie Walter. I have another really fun line and watercolor project, perfect for beginners. It's really easy, looks complex, but it's really easy. And I'm using my technique, which I call the blob and tie-dye technique. And so we're combining the blob and the tie-dye technique to make this adorable, can you see that? Adorable little piece of artwork. Suitable to make into a card, or you could frame it, or you could just send it as is to a friend, or put it on a little easel. So that's our project for today. Let's get started, and thanks for being here. I so appreciate it. It's been so great. You guys are amazing. So here we go. Let's make some art. Okay, let's get started. First, let me go through the materials I'm going to use for this sweet little project. Okay. I am using my regular paint palette, and most of these are Blick Studio's private label tube paints that they no longer make, but I have them. And so I just put them in here, let them dry, and they work as pan paints at this point. So I have a selection of colors there that are all listed in the description. And then I have a little auxiliary palette because I ran out of spaces on that one. For a couple of other colors. So I'll be using that limey green right there. I have a spray bottle that now has my name on it because I taught a workshop and I wanted to make sure I came home with my spray bottle. I will be using a graphite pencil, an eraser, very sparingly, and I'm going to be painting with my brand new Princeton Velvet Touch number 10 round, which I really like. And I will be doing the line work with a 01 micron waterproof pen. Okay, so that's the basic equipment. The paper I'm using, I just got this pad. I hope we can get this in camera. It's a Canson Montral. I guess that's an R. I like it. It's a very nice price. It's kind of a step up from the Canson XL watercolor paper, and I like it. Okay, so that's our materials. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be working fast because the basis of this little illustration is going to be kind of a spectrum. We're going to put blobs that are going to blend together in a spectrum, and then they'll all come together in the end when all the colors match up. So it's kind of a cool technique. You could do this background and then use it for, you could draw anything on top of it. You could do lettering, you could do, we're going to be doing a little flower grouping, but you could do anything you want on there. It could be really fun, and you could do a lot of these backgrounds and then work on them later. That's the beauty of this whole process of line and watercolor. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to move this piece of paper out of the way, and that is 4 inches by 5 1/8 inch because I'm eventually going to probably make it into a greeting card, and that's my standard go-to size because of the size of the envelopes I have. I also am going to clean up this little section of my palette. It got a little ooky, so all I do is just spray it, dab it out. It's fine for what we're doing for today. At some point I'm gonna give this a deep clean, but right now I'm not. Okay, so I'm just using facial tissue here. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you get out your paints, no matter what kind they are, is you want to activate them and get them nice and wet because we want them to be juicy and wet. And because we're going to be working quickly, I'm going to put a little more water in these little areas because I want to make sure that I have enough water to move things around. Same with my green over here. Give it some, because we're going to start with that green. Okay, so these are just going to sit and relax while we paint. The other thing I'm going to do is make sure that this is dry, my surface is dry, so that my paper doesn't get ooky. Okay, so let's start. Oh, the other thing I have is, here, I'll move them into the camera view. I have 2 jars of water. One I'm going to try to keep clean. I try to do that, just so that would be to mix color. And then this will be my jar that I swoosh out my paintbrush when I'm going to the next color. So we're gonna move fast. And so I'm gonna mix up a nice puddle of this green. I want a fairly strong green color. I'm gonna swoosh that out and get some clean water to make sure I have enough. Now, the other thing you want to do is you want to have another piece of paper that you can test your colors on to make sure you get your saturation. So I have another piece of watercolor paper over here. It's not the same, but it'll do the trick. All right, first thing I'm gonna do, okay, when I teach watercolor, as you may have noticed, I don't really teach traditional watercolor. I don't know all those rules. So I basically have two techniques, the blob and the tie-dye. And this is sort of a blobby tie-dye approach. And like I said, we're gonna move fast. And remember, it's just a piece of paper. You can get another one. So I'm gonna just do a nice blobby green right there. And I want this to stay pretty wet because by the time I get over here, I wanna make sure that it's still wet for when my yellow comes in. Okay, moving this out of the way. And moving over to my big palette, I'm going to go with this phthalo blue, which is kind of a bluish green, which I really like. I want to make this pretty pastel-y. So I'm going to add a lot more water to that because I will be drawing on top of it. That's good. All right, so we're going to go to this next blob. Bring that around. They don't have to be perfect circles. In fact, it's probably better if they're just blobby. I'm dabbing off and let that dry. Moving on to my ultramarine. Doing another blob. It's just fun to do this. It's fun to see how your paint reacts. And then I have a mauve color. It's really pretty. Ooh, juicy, juicy. It's really pretty. And that's gonna come and take over there, which is, oh, isn't that pretty? Ooh, I like that. Okay, so it's kind of getting purple, so you can see how everything's, I'm a little, it didn't really marry up, so, I kind of screwed that up. Get that purple out of there. I didn't clean my brush particularly well. Oopsie. I kind of messed that up a little bit, but we're gonna unmess it. Okay, I'm just daubing it. This is where real watercolor people would freak out. That's got some, once that dries, that'll come out. Here, we're looking in real time how to fix something. Now remember, when we do line work on top, a lot of that's gonna get sort of diffused. It's not necessarily fixed, but this is, again, the nature of watercolor and working quickly. Okay, now I'm going to, this is a permanent rose. Make sure that's nice and saturated. Get a little more in there. I think it's a little strong. Okay, we're gonna go into that pink, and we're still nice and wet and juicy in that mauve. And then we've got this warmer red. Get that going. Yeah, you want to move fast. And I'm trying to, I don't want to match up with that, that blue particularly, because it's kind of a greenish blue, and that's going to make some mud. So we are almost around the bend. We're going to do a really strong yellow, a little bit of that orange. And those are going to, now we've met up with the green. So you can see how I've just done a little trip around the block here. And once that's dry, I'll be able to get that fuzzball off of there. I'm not gonna, okay, Ronnie, don't touch it. I'll come back and get that off there. We have a nice wet blob tie-dye technique here. They're all blending together. I think it's gonna be really pretty. I feel like there's a little bit too much of that mauve on there. So your brush acts like a little vacuum cleaner. You can go in with your dryer brush, clean and dry, and hoover that up a little bit if you want to. Otherwise, just let it dry. So anyway, we're gonna let that dry. and I'll be back. Okay, you guys. I am ready to draw on top of this blob, my tie-dyed blob. So, okay, before this dried, I was like, I kind of mucked things up over here. And that's going to happen. So, there's two things there's many things you could do. One of the things you could do is start over. And that is perfectly acceptable. Again, has two sides of the paper. I'm going to choose to use this because I think it worked out basically the way I wanted to. And then I'm going to make sure that I draw on top of this. I don't know if you can see that little, I went in and my brush wasn't clean and blah, blah, blah. I could probably clean it up a little bit more, but I'm not going to mess with it anymore. So everything can be fixed. Okay, most things can be fixed. And I'm going to attempt that here in the interest of showing us how we can deal with what we've done, and it's gonna be fine. Okay, so I wanted to work out my design. This is gonna be a little bit complex, but all doable. You can simplify it if you like, particularly if you haven't mucked up that one corner, and or you can make a completely different design than what I am doing on here. The fact remains that you put down some cool watercolors and we're going to draw on top. Very simple. So I did a very quick sketch, very quick pencil, and just so I can get my bearings of where things are going to land. Plus I wanted to have a big leaf over here to cover up that unsightly spot. So I'm going to go in now and draw this super lightly on top of my watercolor. So I have a map for where I'm going. I will speed up the film because all I'm doing is sort of transferring this idea to this piece of paper. So here I go with my pencil. So I can see this better, and now I'm going to use my marker on top of this. And I love this part. It's so relaxing, and keep a light, I want you to, make a mark, make a commitment to the mark, but also don't worry about, you should, as you get better at doing line work on top of watercolor or line work in general, it's good to have a loose but confident hand. You want to make sure that you have enough movement in your hand so that you're not white knuckling this thing into submission. We want to make it look light and breezy. And because the way I work with doing sort of double lines, I'm not too worried about making mistakes. It's all going to work out. Trust me on this. So I'm just going to start and just make my first line. So sometimes it helps to just make your first straight line and commit to that activity. So I'm just roughly following. I did a super sketchy pencil mark because I want to be able to erase them easily. I don't want to have a heavy pencil line that I have to deal with later. And the ink is what's doing the heavy lifting on this drawing. It is doing the job of everything. The watercolor behind is really just supporting this idea. So I've pretty much diffused that. I am going to go in, I like to make those little lines in between bigger lines, which is helping my issue over here, and I might as well put another line in there to further diffuse that. And if I make this into a card and send it to someone, that is not what they're going to focus on. They're going to focus on this whole thing, and they're going to look at it and go, oh my gosh, that's so cute. That is my intention. And of course, I'm going to add a few dots to that. And I think I'll do the other one because this is going to be in front. I want to make sure that I don't forget that those leaves are going to cross that other flower in the back. So we'll just go into this one. And again, we're just going to put these in with confidence and deliberation. I shouldn't say deliberation, I mean deliberate marks. Of course, there's lots of deliberation. Should I put it here? Should I put it there? And, you know, sometimes we don't love what we do, but it's still a lovely piece of artwork. We don't have to love everything. It's nice to like it, but you don't have to love it. It's okay to have pretty good artwork, because your pretty good is somebody else's, I wish I could do that. Okay, so these are kind of matchy, so I'll do that line in between. And the more I do, the less I care about that blob. It's just fine. It's not like I'm entering this into the Watercolor Society show or anything like that, because frankly, they wouldn't have me. Okay, so this daisy-esque flower is just a big spiral in the middle. And I'm just going to start putting petals around it. And they can be a little bit wonky and quirky because we love wonky and quirky. This is playful artwork. This is you committing to having fun with this. And, you know, we all start somewhere, and I want you to enjoy it. I don't want this to feel like a chore for you. And if making little blobby marks brings you joy, as it does me, then how great is life? It's such a beautiful thing to do. So these, I haven't really committed to what kind of leaves these are going to be. I'm going to decide right now. But what I like to do, if I'm going to have 3 different kinds of flowers, even though, you know me, they're not like real, I like to mix up the leaves so that there's some difference. And so I'm going to make these sort of cute round leaves. And I'll just make a little set of 4 of those. And I'm sort of ignoring the background. I'm not worried about, there, and it's always cute to put a little thing like that in so they know I'm not trying to be botanical on them. Cute. So I'm just ignoring the background. I'm not trying to outline. I do like to cross things over. This kind of bothers me a little bit that this hit right there. Not enough to do anything about it, but it bothers me a little bit. And then I'm putting in these little extra vine type shapes. And that just adds a little something along the way. Again, not getting too worried about where they land. I do like to have a good curve in these lines. It's almost like as if someone just dropped a bunch of flowers on the table. They're not in an arrangement like in a vase. They're just a lovely little scene, if you will. Okay, so that one came out. Now I'm going to do this bigger one, making sure that I go past the leaves and that petal. I'm going to add a little thingy there. It's technical. Thingy. I'm adding a thingy. Oops. Just go over your lines. It's okay. Sometimes our hands don't always do what our brain wants them to do. And then we just come back and fix it. That's a little weird right there. But we'll pretend like we intended that. I like to pretend that I've done something intentional. And then this is sort of a bud of that one. Sort of like a pod. Yeah. So I'm going to make these a little, with little lines on those so you can see, you can pretend like that's that. Maybe. And then I'll put small leaves on here For one thing, I'm running out of space, and also I want to have a third kind of leaf on there. Decisions. Okay. And then we're going to do another one of these vine things. And you can see that this is fairly quick. It looked complex, and it looks complex. It's just not that complex. And I suggest if you want to get better at line work, work in your sketchbook just with line. Don't worry about watercolor at that point. Just draw. Okay. Am I happy with that? You know what it could use? And here's our micro decisions. I'm going to put another one of these vine things. And I'm committing to this vine without putting any pencil on there. Could have worked out, could have wrecked it. It's so hard to know sometimes. I like this. Okay. I'm calling this finished. I think this is really cute. The one thing I'll do is I'm going to let these pens pretty much dry instantaneously, but why take the chance? Because I do want to erase my pencil marks. Now, you can use any eraser. This is just a plastic eraser, which I like a lot. And then some people, as I dig in my little, here, I have a little bucket of erasers. I don't have a kneaded eraser that is out of its container. But with a kneaded eraser, you know, they're the ones that are smushy. In fact, why don't we open this? Yes, I'm using my teeth. Ronnie, don't use your teeth. Here, I have a pair of scissors right here because it's a fully stocked studio. So with the kneaded eraser, oh, double wrapped for your protection. All right, here we go. All right, so on the fly. All right, so that wrapper is off. So a kneaded eraser is very good for your fidgeting purposes. But if you want to, excuse my arm, if you want to, you could just erase very lightly across this and get those pencil lines out. Works great. Very light hand. A lot of people like these because you can sort of press a little bit and you'll you will have less disturbance, let's say, of your watercolor behind. So if you use a soft lead and a light hand, you can do it like this and get most of that off. So you just got an extra bonus lesson on how to use a kneaded eraser. And some people kind of roll it. It is less, if you tend to go heavy, using something like this can sometimes disturb that watercolor. So a kneaded eraser might be just the trick for you. And like I said, if you're fidgeting or thinking about your next move, you get to play around with your kneaded eraser. Spent many a time in high school doing this. Yes, I'm listening. Okay, so again, we have a very cute, I noticed there's a little blob of watercolor, but we'll deal with that somehow. So this is our final little piece of artwork. I think this one is going on a little easel, at least for a little while. On my mantle, I have a tiny easel that I sit these on and then have a rotating little gallery. And every once in a while my husband says, oh my gosh, that one's really cute. So we say cute around here a lot. Anyway, here is the final. I hope you enjoy this project. And if you do, let me know. You can do it 4 different ways. 1, you can hit the like button. 2, you can subscribe. 3, you can hit the little bell to get notified. Or 4, leave a comment. Or you can do all of those things. And I love your comments. I try to answer each one, and I hope that you come back. Got lots of videos for you. So thanks so much. Again, I'm Ronnie Walter, and have a very, very creative day, and be kind to yourself. And take care. Bye.